went to Broken Heart's Kalideth Hotel suite, was bathed in soft golden light, as Ivana stood before the floor-to-ceiling mirror, her reflection barely recognizable in the ivory lace wedding gown. 6 months ago, her world had shattered when her fiancé betrayed her with her best friend. The pain had been suffocating, consuming every waking moment. She'd lost weight, lost sleep, lost herself entirely. That darkness had driven her to make an unconventional decision that would change everything. Through a mutual acquaintance at a charity event, she'd met Marcus Ashford. He was different from any man she'd ever encountered. Tall and commanding, with sharp features carved from marble, and eyes that seemed to hold untold secrets, he carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to power and control. But there was something else about him, something deeper, a vulnerability hidden beneath expensive tailoring and composed silence, a loneliness that mirrored her own. During their first meeting in his penthouse office, Marcus had been direct about his proposition. He needed a wife for strategic business reasons. A hostile takeover was threatening his company, and major shareholders wanted stability, tradition, respectability. A married man appeared more trustworthy, more grounded. He could offer her financial security, a fresh start, a chance to rebuild without the weight of romantic expectations. It was purely practical. It was safe. She had agreed immediately, perhaps too quickly, but safety was all she'd wanted after her heart had been shattered into 1,000 pieces. That morning, they'd exchanged vows in front of a handful of witnesses. No love, no passion, just signatures and formalities. Ivana had believed she could maintain that emotional distance indefinitely. She had been so certain that keeping her heart locked away was the smartest decision she could make. But now, standing in this wedding suite at the luxurious Riverside Palace Hotel, dressed in delicate ivory lace that barely concealed her curves and valleys, she wasn't so sure anymore. The bathroom door opened, and steam rolled out like a sensual mist, carrying the scent of expensive cologne and shower steam. Marcus emerged wearing only dark grey sweatpants, water still clinging to his sculpted chest and shoulders. His wet hair fell across his forehead, giving him a more human appearance than his polished public persona ever suggested. When his grey eyes met hers in the mirror's reflection, something electric and undeniable passed between them. She watched his gaze travel slowly down her body, taking in every curve, every exposed inch of her skin. His jaw clenched visibly, his hands curled into fists at his sides. His chest rose and fell with breaths that were anything but steady. There was raw hunger in his expression, a hunger that contradicted everything he'd promised about keeping this arrangement strictly professional and detached. Marcus took a deliberate step toward her, then another. Each movement was slow and intentional, calculated to give her time to stop him, to remind him of their agreement, to put distance between them. But Ivana didn't move, couldn't move. Her body hummed with anticipation that terrified and thrilled her simultaneously. Her skin tingled with a need she thought she'd buried forever when her ex-fiancé broke her heart, when he stood close enough for her to feel his warmth radiating against her bare shoulders. He raised his hand. His fingers hovered near her cheek, trembling slightly despite his composed exterior. "Tell me to stop," he whispered, his voice rough and desperate like gravel and smoke. "Tell me this is just business, just an arrangement, just a contract between two people. Because if you don't, Ivana, I won't be able to hold back anymore. I'll lose control." She could barely breathe. Her heart pounded so violently against her ribs that she was certain he could hear it, could feel it. Every rational thought screamed at her to step away, to protect herself, to remember why she'd chosen this safe, emotionless marriage in the first place. But her body had other ideas. Her body remembered the way he'd looked at her when she walked down the aisle, his expression intense and focused, the way his lips felt during that brief kiss at the altar, sending electricity through her veins, the promise burning in his eyes when he took her trembling hand. "What if I don't want you to stop?" The words escaped before she could reconsider them, before fear could silence her desire. Something dangerous and primal flickered across Marcus's face. His hand finally made contact with her skin, cupping her cheek with unexpected gentleness that contrasted sharply with the raw hunger blazing in his grey eyes. His thumb traced her lower lip slowly, deliberately, and she felt that simple touch everywhere, in every nerve ending of her body. "You don't know what you're asking," he said, his voice dropping lower, but he leaned closer, his lips now inches from hers, close enough that she could feel his breath. "You don't know how badly I've wanted this, wanted you. From the moment I saw you walking into my office that first day, I've been fighting every instinct telling me to claim you, to make you mine in every possible way." "Then stop fighting," she breathed against his mouth, her voice barely audible. That was all the permission he needed. Marcus crashed his lips against hers with hunger that stole her breath and her reason. This was nothing like the polite, careful kiss at their wedding ceremony. This was pure need, raw desire, months of restraint finally breaking free like a dam bursting. His tongue demanded entry, and she opened for him willingly, tasting something uniquely him, something that made her forget her own name and every reason she'd wanted to keep this emotionally safe. His hands slid into her hair, tilting her head to deepen the kiss, making it more intense. She grabbed his shoulders, feeling the hard muscles bunch and flex under her touch. He was so warm, so solid, so completely overwhelming in the best possible way imaginable. When his teeth grazed her bottom lip, she moaned into his mouth, and the sound seemed to drive him wild with need. Marcus lifted her easily, his hands gripping her thighs as he carried her toward the massive bed covered in carefully arranged rose petals. He laid her down gently, despite the urgency and desperation evident in every line of his powerful body. For a moment, he just stood there, looking at her with an expression that made her feel like the most desirable woman in the entire world. "You're so beautiful," he said, his voice thick with emotion and want. "So perfect. And tonight, you're mine." The possessiveness in his tone should have scared her. Instead, it sent heat flooding through her entire body like fire. She reached up, hooking her fingers in the waistband of his sweatpants. "Then prove it," she challenged, her voice husky with need and desire in one smooth, confident motion. He removed his sweatpants completely. Ivana's breath caught in her throat. He was all man, powerful and perfect, and he wanted her with an intensity that made her core clench with anticipation of what was to come. The night that changed everything. The remainder of the night was a blur of passion and connection unlike anything Ivana had ever experienced. Marcus touched her like she was precious and fragile, like she might break if he wasn't careful, yet with an underlying intensity that showed her exactly how much he desired her. Every kiss was a revelation, every touch was a promise. Every moment they spent tangled together felt like coming home to a place she'd never known existed. He worshipped her body with reverent attention, his lips and hands exploring every curve and valley with deliberate precision. He whispered words of admiration and devotion against her skin that made her believe, at least for that night, that she was worthy of love and passion. By the time they finally collapsed together in the early morning hours, exhausted and satisfied, Ivana realized she'd made a terrible mistake. She'd promised herself emotional distance, but she'd given him her heart instead. The morning light filtered through the curtains as Ivana woke alone in the bed, the scent of their passion still lingering on the silk sheets. She stretched, her body deliciously sore from the night they'd shared. For the first time in months, she felt truly alive, truly seen and valued by another person. She smiled to herself, already imagining how this changed everything between them. But when she went to find Marcus, she discovered him in his office with dark circles shadowing his eyes, looking like he hadn't slept at all. His expression was closed, distant, nothing like the passionate man who'd held her through the night. "We need to talk," he said quietly, and her heart sank at his tone. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with a news alert that made her blood run cold. The headline screamed across her screen: "Billionaire's sudden marriage raises questions about his past." The article contained vicious accusations from someone named Vivian, Marcus's ex-fiancée from years ago. She claimed that Marcus was incapable of satisfying a woman, that he'd paid her to leave him to hide his inadequacy, that his sudden marriage was a desperate attempt to cover up his shameful secrets. The lies were detailed, graphic, and designed to humiliate. The lies were immediately obvious to Ivana. After last night, after the passion they'd shared, she knew exactly what Marcus was capable of. But as she watched his face crumble before her eyes, watched him retreat into shame and self-doubt, she realized the damage had already been done. Years of systematic emotional abuse from Vivian had left deep scars he'd never fully healed. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking with emotion. "I never wanted you to be associated with this scandal and these lies. Maybe we should consider an annulment. I won't drag you down with my damaged reputation. You deserve better than this. No," Ivana said firmly, approaching him. "I'm not going anywhere." But doubt was creeping in like a shadow. She could see it in his eyes, in the way he pulled away from her touch, in how he flinched when she tried to comfort him. That evening, while Marcus locked himself away in his office, Ivana made a critical decision. She contacted a private investigator recommended by Marcus's personal assistant, determined to uncover the truth and fight for their relationship. What she discovered over the following days was shocking and infuriating. Vivian had fabricated everything with meticulous precision. She'd paid journalists to plant false stories in major publications. She'd created fake medical records and leaked them strategically. She'd orchestrated an entire smear campaign designed to destroy Marcus's reputation simply because he'd ended their relationship via discovering her affair with his business partner. The woman was a professional manipulator, but more disturbing was the pattern the investigator uncovered. Vivian had done this to at least 4 other men before Marcus. There was a documented history of manipulation, lies, and vindictive behavior that couldn't be ignored or dismissed. She targeted successful men who rejected her, then systematically destroyed their reputations and lives to satisfy her need for revenge. She was dangerous in ways that went beyond simple cruelty. Ivana gathered all the evidence in a comprehensive folder, her hands shaking as she organized the documents. She knew this information could change everything, could restore Marcus's faith in himself and in their relationship. That evening, she rushed home with the proof and found Marcus in his office, looking hollow and broken. He appeared to be preparing to sign annulment papers, ready to remove her from the wreckage of his life to protect her. She placed the investigation folder on his desk without a word and watched his expression transform. He read through the evidence. Relief washed over his features first, then anger at the betrayal and manipulation, then hope that maybe, just maybe, their connection could be real and true. Understanding finally flickered in his grey eyes as he comprehended the full scope of Vivian's deception and cruelty. "She lied," he whispered, his voice filled with wonder and renewed strength. "About everything. Yes," Ivana confirmed, moving toward him. "Every single word was a lie designed to hurt you and destroy us. But it ends now, Marcus. This ends today." Marcus stood abruptly and pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was the only thing keeping him grounded and anchored to reality. His body shook as he held her, and she realized he was crying, releasing years of pain and doubt. "I'm sorry I doubted us," he said into her hair. "I'm sorry I let her poison my mind and make me question what we have." But Ivana just held him tighter, knowing that healing wouldn't happen overnight, but that together they could weather any storm. The investigation deepens over the following weeks. They worked with lawyers and investigators to build an airtight case against Vivian. The process was emotionally exhausting and draining, forcing Marcus to relive painful memories and humiliating moments from his past. Every deposition required him to sit in a conference room and detail the most private aspects of his life, the lies Vivian had spread, and the impact her deception had on his personal and professional relationships. But through it all, Ivana stood by his side, her unwavering support becoming the foundation he needed to rebuild his sense of self and identity. She attended every meeting with the legal team, holding his hand when he got frustrated, encouraging him when he felt like giving up. She researched Vivian's background extensively, discovering a pattern of manipulation dating back to her teenage years. This wasn't a woman scorned making one mistake. This was a calculated predator who had perfected the art of destruction. The investigator, a sharp woman named Detective Sarah Mitchell, uncovered something particularly damning. Vivian had created an elaborate scheme involving fake accounts, forged documents, and paid witnesses. She'd actually attempted this exact scheme on 3 other men before Marcus, but they'd either paid her off quietly or simply disappeared from public life. Vivian had learned and refined her tactics with each victim. She was evolving, becoming more sophisticated, more dangerous. One evening, as Ivana and Marcus reviewed the evidence together in his study, surrounded by files and photographs, Marcus reached over and took her hand. "I can't believe you did all this for me," he said quietly. "Why didn't you just leave when things got complicated?" "Because I love you," she replied simply. "Because what we have is worth fighting for. Because I couldn't stand by and watch lies destroy the man I care about most." Marcus pulled her close and kissed her forehead. "I love you too, Ivana. I think I have since that first day in my office, but I was too afraid to admit it to myself." When Vivian was finally confronted with the evidence during a legal deposition 3 months later, she put on a show of denial and indignation. But as the investigators presented file after file of proof, email after email showing her coordination with journalists, contract after contract showing her payments to false witnesses, her facade crumbled. Her lawyer advised her to accept a plea deal, warning her that fighting the charges would only result in harsher sentences. In a shocking turn of events, Vivian agreed to a televised confession. She sat before cameras, her face makeup streaked with tears, and admitted to everything. The cameras captured her vulnerability as she described how rejection had driven her to madness, how Marcus's refusal to stay with her had triggered something dark and destructive within her soul. She explained how she'd justified her lies to herself, how she'd convinced herself that destroying Marcus was justice for the pain she felt. The confession was broadcast across every news network, every social media platform, every major publication that had previously run her lies. The public reaction was swift and decisive. Public opinion shifted entirely in Marcus's favor. Magazines that had run salacious stories about his alleged inadequacy published apologies and retractions. News anchors admitted they should have verified her claims before running the stories. But watching the broadcast in Marcus's office with Ivana beside him, Marcus didn't feel triumphant. Instead, he felt sad for the woman Vivian could have been if she hadn't let bitterness and rage consume her soul. He understood, in a way, the pain that had driven her to such extremes, even though her response had been unforgivable and cruel. "Do you feel sorry for her?" Ivana asked, reading his expression. "I feel sad," Marcus replied, "for anyone who wastes their life on revenge and destruction. But mostly I'm grateful." "Grateful for what?" Ivana asked, confused. "Grateful because without her lies, you wouldn't have looked for a safe marriage, and I wouldn't have met the woman who changed my entire world. Everything that happened with Vivian led me to you, and I wouldn't trade that for anything." Ivana leaned against him, her head resting on his chest as they listened to his heartbeat. "That's beautiful," she whispered. Over the next several weeks, as the legal proceedings concluded and Vivian accepted her sentence, Marcus's reputation was fully restored. His company thrived without the shadow of lies hanging over it. Business associates who'd previously distanced themselves reached out to apologize and rebuild relationships. The world that had briefly turned against him celebrated his vindication and his resilience. But for Marcus and Ivana, none of that mattered as much as what they'd built together. They'd survived fire and come out stronger. They'd faced lies and chosen truth. They'd been tested and remained committed to each other. Their love had been forged in adversity and proven in difficult circumstances. A proposal that meant everything 3 months after Vivian's confession and conviction. Marcus surprised Ivana with a trip to a private beach resort in the Caribbean. They flew on his private jet, and Ivana had no idea what he had planned. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange, gold, and pink, Marcus took her hand and walked her along the pristine shore, The beach was empty except for them, the waves crashing gently against the sand, creating a natural symphony. Rose petals had been carefully scattered across the sand in a path leading to a secluded spot near the water's edge. Small lanterns with flickering candles were positioned around an intimate seating area, decorated with flowers and flowing white fabric. "We're already married," Marcus said with a gentle smile as he guided her to the prepared space. "But that first wedding was based on convenience and fear. Neither of us were ready to open our hearts, to believe that real love was possible. I want to marry you again, Ivana. This time for all the right reasons. For love, for passion, for the future we're building together, for the woman who fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself." He guided her to stand facing him, and then he got down on one knee in the sand, and Ivana's breath caught in her throat. She watched as he opened a velvet box, revealing a stunning emerald ring surrounded by diamonds, the same shade as her own eyes. "This ring represents what I want to give you," Marcus continued, his voice thick with emotion. "Not just a legal commitment, but a promise of forever. Will you marry me again, Ivana? Will you choose me every single day, knowing exactly who I am, knowing the darkness I've faced and overcome? Will you stand with me through everything life throws at us? Will you be my wife, my partner, my best friend, and my greatest love?" Tears streamed down her face as she nodded vigorously, unable to form words. "Yes," she finally managed to say. "Yes, 1,000 times yes. I will marry you again. I will choose you every day." Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms. He kissed her deeply, pouring all his love and gratitude into that kiss. When they finally broke apart, they were both laughing and crying, holding each other on that empty beach as the sun continued its descent toward the horizon. Their second wedding took place exactly 2 weeks later on that same beach, just as the sun was setting. It was intimate and authentic, with only their closest friends and family present. Marcus's business partner and best friend served as best man. Ivana's sister, who had supported her through the darkest days after her first engagement ended, served as maid of honor. When Ivana walked down the aisle of rose petals in a simple white dress that flowed in the ocean breeze, she felt more joy than she'd ever thought possible. The dress was less formal than her first wedding gown, more relaxed and natural. It suited who she'd become through this journey. Someone stronger, braver, more confident in her own worth. Marcus waited for her at the altar with tears streaming down his face. He wasn't trying to hide his emotions this time, wasn't pretending to be invulnerable or in control. He stood there, letting everyone see how much he loved her, how grateful he was for her presence in his life. When they exchanged vows this time, every word was real, chosen from deep within their hearts. They didn't read traditional vows from a book. Instead, they spoke their own promises to each other. "I promise to trust you," Ivana said, her voice steady and clear, "to fight for us when things get hard, to believe in you even when you doubt yourself, to love you not because it's safe or convenient, but because you are worthy of love. I choose you today, and I will choose you every day for the rest of my life. I promise to be worthy of that trust," Marcus replied, taking her hands. "To show you every single day how much you mean to me, to love you with everything I am, to protect you and cherish you, to fight beside you for whatever comes next. I promise to be the man you believe I am, because you've shown me that I'm capable of being that man." Their kiss as husband and wife for the second time was witnessed by the setting sun, painting the sky in brilliant colors and the endless ocean stretching out before them. It was a kiss that promised forever, that sealed a commitment built on truth and genuine love rather than convenience or fear. The reception was small but beautiful, celebrated with their loved ones on the beach as darkness fell and stars emerged in the sky. They danced together under the stars, and Marcus held her like she was the most precious thing he'd ever possessed. They laughed, they danced, they shared stories with the people they loved most. As the night wore on and their guests slowly departed, leaving them alone on the beach, Marcus pulled Ivana into the shallow water. They stood there together, the warm ocean surrounding them, the sound of waves, the only noise around them. I want to spend the rest of my life making you as happy as you've made me, Marcus whispered into her hair. I want to wake up every morning and thank whatever forces brought you into my life. I want to build a future with you, Ivana, a real future, filled with love and trust and possibility. Ivana looked up at him, seeing the man she'd fallen in love with, the man who'd let her see his vulnerability and allowed her to help him heal. I want that too, she said softly. That night in their beach house, with windows open to let in the sound of waves and the gentle ocean breeze carrying the scent of salt and flowers, they made love with the freedom of two people who had fought for their happiness and won. There were no more doubts, no more fears, no more hesitation, only the pure joy of two souls who had found their perfect match. Their love-making was tender yet passionate, a beautiful expression of everything they felt for each other. Marcus took his time with her, worshipping her body like a sacred temple. He kissed every inch of her skin, whispering words of love and admiration against her body. Ivana responded with equal passion and devotion, showing him through her touch and her presence how much she valued him and their connection. When they finally came together, it felt like a perfect completion, like two halves of a whole becoming one. They moved in perfect harmony, their bodies speaking a language older than words, their souls intertwining in a way that transcended the physical. When they reached their peak, they held each other tightly, their names like prayers on each other's lips. I love you, Marcus whispered against her skin as they lay tangled together afterward, their bodies still connected, neither willing to break their physical contact. Thank you for seeing past the rumors and lies. Thank you for fighting for us when I was ready to give up and walk away. I love you too, Ivana replied softly, tracing patterns on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her palm. And I would fight for you 1,000 times over, Marcus, because what we have is worth everything. You are worth everything to me. They fell asleep in each other's arms, the sound of the ocean a soothing backdrop to their dreams of what the future would hold. When they woke in the morning, sunlight streaming through the windows and illuminating their bodies, they knew that together they could overcome anything. Over the following months, they began building their life together in earnest. Marcus proposed new business ventures, ones that were less about accumulating power and more about making a positive impact on the world. Ivana started a non-profit organization dedicated to supporting women recovering from relationship trauma and emotional abuse. Their combined passion for helping others created a foundation for their relationship that was strong and meaningful. They found an apartment in the heart of the city, but spent most weekends at the beach house where they'd fallen in love and renewed their commitment to each other. The space became their sanctuary, a place where they could be completely themselves without the pressures of the outside world. 6 months into their marriage, Marcus took Ivana to an exclusive restaurant for their anniversary dinner. Over champagne and expensive wine, he told her he wanted to start a family. When she was ready, he wanted to build not just a marriage, but a full life together, with children and adventure and all the beautiful things life had to offer. Ivana cried happy tears as she told him she wanted that too. She'd never believed after her first engagement ended that she would ever want to open her heart to the possibility of family and children. But Marcus had shown her that trust was possible, that love could be real and transformative and worth the risk. A year after their beach wedding, Ivana discovered she was pregnant. The news filled them both with joy and wonder. They prepared a nursery in their apartment, painted soft colors on the walls, and filled shelves with books and toys. Marcus attended every prenatal appointment, held her hand through childbirth classes, and read everything he could about being a good father. When their daughter, Sophia, was born with her mother's eyes and her father's dark hair, they both understood that their love story had come full circle. What had started as a practical arrangement between two broken people had transformed into something beautiful and real. Their daughter was proof of the magic that happened when two people chose to believe in love despite their fears. Years later, when Sophia was old enough to understand, Ivana and Marcus would tell her the story of how they met, how they fought through lies and doubt to find each other, how love had conquered all obstacles. They wanted her to know that real love was worth fighting for, that vulnerability was strength, and that sometimes the best things in life came from the most unexpected places. Marcus had become known not just as a successful businessman, but as a devoted husband and father. He mentored other men who'd experienced similar situations of slander and reputation destruction, helping them rebuild their lives. Ivana's nonprofit grew into a national organization, helping thousands of women find healing and hope after trauma. Together, they proved that love built on truth, trust, and genuine commitment was stronger than any rumor or lie. They proved that two people who had been broken could come together and create something whole and beautiful. They proved that forever wasn't just a fairy tale, but something real and achievable for those brave enough to fight for it. On quiet evenings, sitting on the porch of their beach house, watching the sunset with their daughter playing safely nearby, Marcus would pull Ivana close and whisper the words that had become their personal mantra. "I love you, and I'm so grateful for that night we met. That night that was supposed to be just business changed my entire life." And Ivana would smile, resting her head on his shoulder, and reply, "I thought it would be one night, but you turned my world upside down in the most beautiful way possible, and I wouldn't change a single moment of our journey." That kind of love, the kind that survives tests and emerges stronger, the kind that transforms broken people into whole souls, the kind that builds families and futures and legacies, was the kind that lasted forever.